Okay, hello and welcome, folks. I can't watch the stream on it's live on YouTube at least. Can't watch. How's it going, YouTube? How's it going, Twitch? How are folks doing? We've got a live viewer tournament here today. I have been logged out of Twitch, so I cannot put up the command, unfortunately. I can't type or chat or anything. But several fine folks have found their way into these tournaments. So we're going to get started opening up their games here. And hi, Jody. Yeah, hopefully we'll sort some of this stuff out eventually. It's been a very frustrating 20 minutes this afternoon trying to log into Twitch. If we go to this Chess Dojo Club, this will show current events. It's not showing it. What? That's insane. Why does it not show it? Super annoying. I see the event right here. Ay. Hey, FXL, the links are wrong and I can't fix them. I've been defeated. What can I tell you? I'm not even allowed to chat or type them myself. They're there. The tournaments are there. They're happening. You will have to be very resourceful to get into the tournaments today, I guess. I guess that's what we're learning. I will have to be very resourceful if I want to comment any of the games in the 1600 plus section. Because I have a link over here for myself. You'll type the link in chat. One of the links is, let's see, chess.com/play/arena. That's how they both start. They've both started at Melt Like Butter. Yeah, they've both started. Both URLs start www.chess.com/play/arena. And one of them is arena number 3894669. The other is, oh wait, I can type it into my thing here. Open to all to join. Let's see, we'll say they are chess.com/play/arena. And this one here. And this is under 1600. Okay, so there are the numbers below me for these tournaments. Now let me try to just improve my window a tiny bit. That seems pretty good. Let's get rid of that little gear. And let's go with that more or less. Woo! Great. It's good. Good day, Lauren. Excellent. Yeah, very, very weird Boondock Striker. Hi, Evan. There are people in there, so there's some way to get to it. I'm just struggling slightly to figure out how to guide you there. Why doesn't the club show it as a current event here? There it is. There it is. I see it now under current events in the Chess Dojo Club. Do you see that, folks? It shows the 2 right here. They now appear. So you could also find them by going chess.com/club/chessdojo. Is that the URL for this thing? Yeah. chess.com/club/chessdojo. That'll work as well now. Okay, so let's call up a cool game here. Oh, this looks like a fantastic position here between Everest Knight and Darth Guinness. I was out with the family, so I have to go get the kids to bed. I will get back to commentary in about 5 minutes or so, I think. Sydney International? Super! Oh, that's great. I'm really happy we've rekindled, or we've held. I'm really happy that your joy and, love in the game has been rekindled. I don't think everyone needs to play chess or always be playing chess, etc. But it's, it's nice when somebody's enjoying it, for sure. So happy to see that. All right, I'll be back in about 5 minutes. You guys can start figuring out what you think of this game. It looks like Black's played a gambit. So they're down a pawn, and the first question is, what's Black's compensation for the pawn? Would you rather be black or white? That sort of a thing, right? I also think you're probably too strong for tier 3, yeah. Would be my feeling. All right, I'll see you all in hopefully 5 minutes. If you hear some shrieking from downstairs, that's how the sausage is made, where the sausage is bedtime. Be forgiving of us. Let's do it, Dojo. Let's do it. Okay. Okay, here Black's expanding. That's the big move. That's the big move. Exciting. And White backs off. And now Black needs to defend this pawn. This pawn is really, really crucial to Black's potential compensation for the pawn. So, folks, I asked you around here, right? We were around here. And I asked you, what do you think? Does Black have compensation, or how much? You know, what do we think of this position we got here? And yeah, what did folks think? I don't see clear answers in chat, so I'm curious what folks thought of this situation. Black is definitely down a pawn, and there have been a couple trades which reduces some of the aggressive potential. But what Black does have going for them is pretty much this one pawn on e5 that I was just talking about in a situation, 3 moves down the road. This pawn here is well placed in the center, right? It takes a little extra space for Black. And relatively, White has these 2 pawns, which are 2 instead of 1, but they don't take as much space as the pawn on e5 at the moment. So Black should have a little bit of compensation because of that. The other thing is that White's bishop, and it's kind of 2 sides of the same coin. I don't know if I should say the other thing, but you see this bishop is not so amazing because of the pawn on d3. So Black needs to be very careful about trading on f3 or e2, because basically the advantage of this pawn versus these pawns could partly be said to be the advantage of this bishop versus White's bishop. So if, for example, Black played bishop f3 in this position, Black would now have no compensation for the pawn. You still have your e5 pawn, but you actually have no compensation because the e5 pawn no longer does anything special. White's pieces are all fine, right? The rooks can use the e file to pressure this pawn. The bishop's got a long diagonal. Queen's very well posted. So you would have zippity-doo-dah for compensation. So you have to be prepared as Black plays rook c8. If White plays h3, you have to be prepared to retreat. If White plays like knight d2, you have to not take, right? You have to be prepared to retreat again. Very important. And if you look, Black's last move was bishop g4. This move was almost certainly not the very best move. And people play this move when they feel like they're in an aggressive position where they need to play aggressive moves. But in a lot of positions, this piece on this square just tends to trade for something. So it ends up not being aggressive, but trading. And you have to ask yourself, do I want to trade on f3 or e2 potentially? And if the answer is no and no, then why are we putting the piece here? Okay, and there's another square that people sometimes put the bishop on, which is here. And that's designed to make it harder for White to play d4 without losing the pawn on c2. And just an all-around nice square. And that is a big alternative. Another alternative is to try and put the bishop on b7, but that's hard to do here because of potentially a little tactical trick that if Black goes b6, they might be loose on the c file, and the move knight e5 might work for White. You'd have to calculate pretty carefully to know if it does or not. Hi, Akash, and I hope you're doing well. Thank you for your kind message. So this is what you'd have to be careful about before playing b6. You'd have to make sure that there isn't this tactic. Idea is if knight takes, queen takes. I'm on mute? I'm on mute? Everyone else seems to hear what I'm saying. And if queen takes, and even though the bishop's hanging, it looks like the rook might be hanging. So Black might not be able to get out of it. Thanks, Akash. Okay, it must be just Courtney who has it muted because Courtney's probably playing. And so they're saying it's muted so I can't hear what you say, but you know, they can still see everything I'm drawing on the board. Okay. So in this position, it would be very desirable maybe to put the bishop on the long diagonal, but I don't see it working out. So we got bishop g4 played. Let's keep track of whether or not... Oh, sorry. Does black have enough compensation? I never gave my answer for you all to compare yours to. My thought would be black does not have enough compensation for a full pawn. But they have, other than being down a pawn, they have a small advantage on the board. So maybe a third of a pawn of compensation, and then you're down a pawn. So the evaluation would be something like 2/3 of a pawn in white's favor. Somewhere around, if you were giving it a computer value, at least the old computer values that I'm accustomed to from 10 years ago when the computer didn't look 100 moves ahead, you would give it an evaluation of something like from 0.66 to 0.75 for white, probably. 0.66 seems pretty reasonable. Okay, and let's track how that goes. So white plays rook e1. By defending the bishop, in some cases, you've got a sneaky knight takes e5 tactic. The point being knight e5, the bishop's undefended, and if the bishop takes on e2, rook takes on e2. Defending the rook can secretly attack e5 as well as defending e2, right? So let's do a little warm-up calculation, everybody. After Darth Guinness played rook c8 here, could white have tried this knight takes e5 tactic? All right. And I want you to commit on this one. You can have a full minute or two to calculate if you want. But I want you to commit and not just say something like, it looks good, or I don't know, or knight takes e5, rook d4, I don't know. Say this move does or doesn't work, you know. Knight takes e5 wins back the pawn, or knight takes e5 loses a pawn, or loses a piece, or wins a piece, or remains down a pawn after a long sequence. Clear answer, very important to pin yourselves down. All right, I just want to go, let me see, I want to try and go on Twitter and tweet that Friday Night Fights is happening. All right, I posted it. I did it. I tweeted like a pro. All right, nobody's answered. I'll give you guys the answer at this point. The answer is white cannot play knight takes e5 here. Oh, we got it. We got an answer just in time from Seth. Knight takes e5 is a no from Seth and a no from Melt Like Butter. Yeah, you guys are right. So knight e5, it may look like genius because the bishop's hanging. So a sample variation would go bishop e2, rook e2, defending the knight, knight takes e5, queen takes e5, or queen c7. Either way looks sort of okay, right? Hi, Alvin Bread. Yeah, I've heard of this blue sky thing. I haven't used it myself yet. But there's a big problem with knight e5. We have to be more thorough about our candidate moves. Black can take on e5 with the knight. And unfortunately for white, the knight defends g4. So the bishop's no longer hanging on g4, right? So that's the idea of knight e5, is your bishop's hanging, and if you trade, I defend my knight. And if you take on e5, the idea is I'm picking up the hanging bishop, right? Yay for me. But knight e5 defends the bishop. You can't, I mean, you could take with the queen, I guess, but you'll come out behind here. It's fancy, but every move black could play leaves black ahead. Even queen e1 check, followed by rook c2 is winning for black. But, you know, queen b2, keeping the extra queen is simpler. And yeah, if you go here, the knight escapes from the rook while recapturing that bishop, and black's up a piece. So knight e5 would actually be a blunder, losing a piece. So black was right. They didn't need to play, you know, f6 or rook e8 or something here. Rook c8 was fine, putting the rook on an open file and defending the queen, preparing to potentially move the knight, right? So that's just a quick thing that we should be thorough about our calculations. During series of captures, you kind of have to look at all the captures, so to speak. You know what I mean? When you're doing like a capture race or a complicated trading line, right? You're taking stuff, they're taking stuff. You have to really look at all the possible captures, and then at the end of each line, when there's nothing left to capture, you have to correctly count the pieces that are left on the board. And then say this left white up, or this left white down, or this left the players equal, you know? Okay, so the game went on. Queen c4 was played, tagging this bishop. Black defended with the queen, which was an interesting choice, but it works. Oh, black actually wanted the queen off this file to start threatening moves like knight d4 or something. Oh, I understand what black was thinking. They wanted the queen out of the way. And then queen c4, f5 was played. Aggressive. Queen came back, and now black had to defend this coconut, right? We said this pawn is basically all of black's compensation. So black needs to keep it on the board. There was also an interesting candidate move, f4 probably, right? That would have been, yeah, actually quite interesting as well, f4. Normally that would be bad shape because this pawn here is on the open file. You don't want it to be backwards. But here it like lets your bishop do things, and it's got some punch. The queen doesn't have a lot of good squares. If she comes here, there's this complicated move to calculate. And if she comes back, you can sort of try and keep harassing her, running her out of squares, you know, like looking to do your counterplay. So Seth says f4 would be hard to resist. f4 is definitely interesting. Rook e8 is the standard move, Seth. Rook e8 should be the default move because it maintains your pawn duo like this. But what you have to be careful about with this kind of a move is what if white plays knight d2, trying to trade your bishop? Because you played f5, your bishop's actually stuck here. If you're simply walking into a trade as white, as black, then this would be a no-no. Even though rook e8 is like a standard move. You have to look, is my bishop trapped? Not because I'm going to lose a piece, but because I'm going to trade a piece. Once that trade happens, the advantage is gone pretty much, right? So black would have to really calculate that before going for the rook e8 move. And if rook e8, knight d2 were a problem, excuse me, long day, then black has to not play rook e8 and play something more impactful and less subtle, such as f4, right? Now, here's the calculation. Rook e8, knight d2. Does this work for white? Or can black avoid this bishop trade? Thing's bishop got trapped and it had to trade, exactly. We think of a trapped piece as something that you win or lose, right? But sometimes a trade is so favorable for one player or the other. And here, like in the Ding game, one player is ahead by a pawn, right? So sometimes a trade is so favorable for one side compared to the other that you could trap a piece into a trade, not trap it into winning it, and it could still be a huge effect. Calculate, it depends on the situation, Lauren, and depends on the level of the person I'm asking. You know, some people I would expect them to go deeper than others. I just had a nice opportunity 2 days ago to do a little calculation session with somebody much, much, much better than me. And when we reviewed the answers, it was clear that their standard for how deep to go was completely different than mine. Is that right, Melt Like Butter? The Indian government said he doesn't need to pay taxes on the win from the match? That's lovely. I mean, to some extent, I believe all people should be treated equally. But I also feel like the top chess players don't even get paid enough. So the idea that Gukesh would keep his money somehow makes me feel... My instinct is to feel nice and warm about it. Although now I'm like checking myself and saying, but is that really best? What about all the people who do have to pay their taxes? You know, I'm not 100% sure that I immediately hit the right answer on this. But my first instinct was just to be happy for him. It seems like nice, like he did something really special, right? So, you know. Oh, you're saying public memes saved him 4.6 crore? Crore? That's pretty funny. Yeah. I learned what crore were long ago when I wrote a little rap about Vishy Anand. I did a little bit of research. This might not be how other people write rap songs. I think some people listen to beats and like smoke joints and just like catch a vibe and words come out. But me, I do research. That's how I write my rap sometimes. So I read about Anand at the time, and found out what crore were at that time. Yeah, Seth is saying on principle he doesn't like there being exceptions for like people making millions to not pay taxes either. Crore. E in the end is silent. Okay, but Melt Like Butter, if you say like crore pati, like somebody who's like, you know, somebody who has crore, then you hear the E, right? But if it's just a crore, then I don't say it. So he has like 4.6 crore. It's crore pati. Oh, okay. Thank you. That's helpful. Okay, so he won 11.6 crore, and now he's a crorepati. Yay, Gukesh! We love you here. Okay. Anyone have a thought about this knight d2 move, whether or not it forces the bishop trade and sort of dissipates black's compensation for the pawn sack? Unagi Don says it abandons the d4 square, which seems risky. Yeah, potentially, yeah. Oh, Lauren posted a line. I'll go check it. sorry, Lauren. In this position, after white plays knight d2, doesn't have black have bishop e2, rook e2, knight d4, followed by taking on c2. Exactly, Lauren. Very good. Hi, Dabo. Welcome again. Yeah, got it, Melt Like Butter. That's what I was thinking. Okay, so Lauren found the real answer to my question. Black's not necessarily saving the bishop from this. And if you try to save the bishop with the move f4, I think it doesn't work because of bishop takes, pawn takes, bishop takes. Isn't that sneaky? So actually, if you play f4, hoping to like save your bishop, there's bishop takes g4. So this position is, I think, a cool little puzzle because there's more than one thing Black could try, and one of them works and one of them doesn't. So I like that for puzzles to have, like, you know, a possible false solution instead of just you look at one move and of course it's the right answer. So to me it looks like f4 bishop g4 doesn't really work. But if you just trade, yeah, if the pawn keeps eating, you can keep calculating. My calculation says the rook would come here. And then you can't save both rooks, so the bishop will trade for a rook. And if white's able to also clean up the d-pawn, it's going to be basically technical, right? So, like, you play knight d4, bishop c8, rook c8, rook here. White's just winning the ending, yeah. Why does it matter to save the bishop? Aha. You needed to come here a couple minutes sooner, Dabo, to know. But Dabo, you're a strong enough player that I think you know this on your own. Why would Black not want to trade the bishops here? Black's down a pawn, right? What's Black's compensation for being down a pawn? It's partly the space, but how does space manifest? It manifests as your minor pieces are a little bit better than White's. Now, if you trade your minor pieces, where's your compensation? It's not even, Black doesn't have an attack here. They don't have anything like aggressive or really powerful, but they need to keep their compensation, right? The positional compensation they have is not enough for a pawn, but right now it might be enough to keep White from winning the game, right? So you need to keep the compensation, the positional compensation you have, make life as difficult for the opponent as possible. So after knight to d2, very, very cool. Lauren points out that Black can actually make the trade, but it doesn't work for White here because of knight d4. And someone else, I think Unagi or someone with a name like Unagi, had said that they were worried about this, but they hadn't found the exact line, right? So the idea is, yes, Lauren, it's mildly bad. I'm just honest, you know. There's knight d4, and then Black takes on c2. So Black can't avoid the trade here, but actually it's not right for White to force the trade because knight d4 with tempo and taking on c2. So after rook e8, White should not move the knight from f3, and White did not. They played a3 to stop the move knight b4, I imagine. White probably thought Black was starting to threaten knight b4 coming after c2. And so Lauren, yeah, I mean, the question I'd asked, right, was, you know, is White forcing this trade? So it would be reasonable for you to consider the f4 move as a candidate move, unless you immediately saw the winning idea and then you didn't look for anything else. That's fine as well. In general, if you see a line that's winning in chess, you can generally say that's good enough. I don't need to look at anything for anything else. But folks, you understand here, I was saying maybe f4 so we could save the bishop, right? Was tempting last move. Rook e8 was played instead, and if then your opponent tries to force the trade, you should say, but we still have f4 in the pocket, right? So it is a move that should have come up as a candidate move for folks who are struggling to find a good continuation for Black. You can also calculate knight d4 with hitting the bishop, with a bishop g4, knight c2 hitting the queen. This is a slightly messier calculation. It turns out it's still good for Black, but not as good as trading on e2 and then playing knight d4. Okay, so a3 was played. What would I play for White? I would play c3, actually, stopping knight b4 and knight d4. What would be the reason that White maybe didn't want to play c3? Because I feel like Everest Knight was seeing that they couldn't move the knight. They were seeing the knight b4 could be annoying when they played a3. Was there anything even better that white could do here? I would say c3, but let's say Everest Knight was thinking about knight b4 and they thought of a3 or c3. Why did they not want to play c3? Do you guys know what thought or idea would prevent a lot of chess players from playing c3 here? One of the things about chess players is we're full of so many ideas, we misapply a lot of them. That's why often learning a bunch of new stuff doesn't make somebody better. It just makes them more confused because they haven't yet incorporated it. They don't know when what outweighs what. Like, let's say you learn about the bishop pair, but you don't yet know if the bishop pair is better or worse than a pawn structure defect or activating a pawn majority or taking the initiative or taking an open file. So somebody tells you about the bishop pair being an advantage, and suddenly you're trying to use the bishop pair as an advantage, but A, you don't know how to execute it once you get it, and B, you don't know when it is or isn't worth trading different advantages for it. You see how that could be confusing? So a lot of times you'll see people just misapplying a lot of chess knowledge. Yeah, I think, Dabo, the thing that would hold most people back would be the backward pawn. They're seeing like, oh, if I play c3, then my d pawn becomes backwards and black can attack it on the file. The thing is, it's more important to keep this knight out of these squares than to keep this pawn rock solid. At the moment, you're pretty passive, but you're going to be able to play rook d1. You're going to be able to defend it with rook, bishop, and queen. And because you have the c pawn, you can eventually play d4. It's not going to be totally blockaded. So you have time to play rook d1 and then maybe look at trying to trade a piece here eventually. So I guess, yeah, Seth, it's maybe not totally backward. Maybe backward would be if this pawn were on c4. It is still in a duo. It's kind of an important distinction, right? That black can't blockade d4. But it's like potentially like less well protected on the open file, right? Like the idea is that c3 leaves the pawn softer on that file. But basically here, it's more important to restrict black's activity, gain time to bring your rook here, offer maybe a piece trade, look at d4, look at pressuring e5. Things will work out. You'll be able to deal with the mild weakness of this pawn. It's mildly weakened. c3 does weaken the pawn, but this is still the best thing to do, if that makes sense. Because like after a3, white's not threatening too much, right? Black might even be able to play knight d4 themselves, for all I know. And you'd have to calculate, oh, black did play knight d4. And you'd have to calculate knight takes, pawn takes, hitting the queen, hitting e2, hitting c2. I don't think it works, but black went for it. Let's see if I'm right or wrong. Or if Darth Guinness was right or wrong. This happened. Queen came here defending c2. Rook e7 was played. White gets a trade. White gets another trade. And white overprotects the backward pawn. I mean, the big question is, could white play rook to e1 here, I think, right? I didn't mean to rap just now, melt like butter. But I might occasionally, use certain cadences in my language. I mean, anytime you're speaking, you have a choice to try and choose your words and speak them in a good order. Have a little rhythm or find a rhyme or an alliteration or some kind of pleasant pattern here and there. Parallelism is satisfying as well. What do you guys think? Could white have even seized the file from black right here? Right here, right now. Bupanase like a Dangan rider. It looks like black was wrong to play knight d4 at this point, right? Because we just traded both knights, both bishops, and a rook while down a pawn as black. Plus doubled this pawn, which doesn't look amazing. And maybe white can even take the file from black. What do you guys think? It's hard to keep up with the players. They're like 10 moves ahead of this. They're so fast. You can see that the players are playing too quickly, right, folks? Because we just can't catch up with their game. They're almost like 10 moves ahead of me, and I'm just asking you some simple 1 and 2 move details here. Well, not simple. Okay, I'm asking you some 2 to 3 move details, but I'm asking you questions that are at an appropriate level for Everest Knight and Darth Guinness. Yeah, VTT VVT found the problem. White couldn't take everything here with rook e1. Exactly right. Because rook e1 fails to rook c2. That's why you have to be careful when you think you're converting, right? You don't yet have your back rank sealed. You haven't yet secured the file. And the c pawn is under some small pressure here. So, yeah, this position is the most forcing line after knight d4, pretty much. So when black played knight d4, what were they going for if not something like this? And it's just trading everything. It's just no good. So there are 2 main moves that I would consider here for white. The first move, well, first I would consider rook e1, c rook c2, and reject it. And then there are 2 moves I would look at. One is rook c1, as played in the game, and the other is c4. c4 aims to deal with the pressure on the c file, right? Maybe I can play rook e1 next. And if black takes, I can take, and now I've got a passer. But I've also split up my pawns, and I didn't yet get my rook developed. So I just have to be careful. You know, does queen c5 bother me, etc., right? I would just have to calculate. I would have to calculate a little bit. Like, does black have any good move here right after trading on c3? So that would be my caution. I mean, it's a classical game. They've got 30 minutes on the clock. They can spend some of it, right? So before playing c4, I would definitely double check that. And yeah, rook c1 was played. That's definitely a good-looking move. Rook e8, taking the e file. g3, getting rid of back rank mate. Good choices. Good choices. King f1 with the idea of playing rook e1. Oh, and it's achieved. Beautiful. Yeah, king f1 worked out a beauty. Black's got the idea of queen d5, so this queen prepares queen e4 as needed. Rook f3. Check. Oh, I think queen e8 might have been better attacking h5. Oh, the queen's defending it for now. It's complicated. Queen check, king up, rook e5, queen c2, and you've got mate 1 move before black. It was FXL. Congrats. You know, I can make any reference I want, and somebody in chat always catches it. That's like this fun, very, very fun game to play. You guys can play it one day if you ever stream. Just refer to the most random thing, and somebody will get it. I don't even know that bupanase like a dangan rider are the right words or what the heck those words would mean. But you got it. All right, I'm going to show this variation on the board now that I just referenced with words and arrows. Here, white's king starting to feel uncomfortable. Black's into the pawns on the second rank, munching away. But we've got checkmate 1 move before black. So it works. And therefore, I think we could say that queen e8 would have been strong here for white. White went queen e6, rook e2, rook f6, queen e5. Nice choice for white. Attacking this, centralizing, offering the queen trade. I think white can win the rook and pawn ending if black trades queens. It'll be close. We've caught up with the live position. It's a dramatic choice for black. I think if you trade queens, there's a pretty good chance that white can win. But you also can't really avoid the queen trade. You can't allow queen h5 with check. So basically, you're looking at queen takes, rook takes, or rook f5, queen takes. I think that's pretty much... You also get some of the syllables wrong, making me feel better, FXL. Thank you. Right, Assess says, if we don't trade queens, we'll be even more losing. So it's a choice. We have to calculate 2 different rook endings here, right? Rook f5, queen c5, rook c5, or queen e5, rook e5, maybe rook c6. Rook c8 played. Oh, that makes sense. Similar to rook f5. Yeah, I think that's a good choice. Against queen e5, rook e5, I had a stronger feeling like white would win this rook ending. But after rook c6, similar to rook f5, queen takes, rook takes, white's rook is at the moment passively defending that pawn. The drawing chances are stronger. Although there's still like a plan to try and win for white. Like you bring the king here and then you activate your rook, right? White might still win. We'll see. We're probably going to get this ending. Yeah, it's logical. So now to me, the king goes to d2 with the idea of lifting the rook. Maybe whenever your king's on d2, black goes rook f5, so your rook is tied to this. But then you can break with c3 at some point. Yeah. Oh, so it might be very important for black to throw in rook b5, folks. Because if you make white play b3, then c3 will never be as strong as a pawn break, right? So like let's say king e1 was played. Yep. So here I might go like king g6, king d2, rook b5. Oh, there's already king c1, huh? Maybe I go rook b5, b3, rook c5, seemingly just losing time, huh? King d2, rook f5. Yeah, I think I think it should probably be done. Okay, Lauren, you think white should have enough to just win methodically in any case? I mean, your plan is very logical. I mean, Lauren could not lay out the schematic plan any more clearly, right? Take the king that's doing nothing to protect the weakness, then activate our rook. Because black has a couple pawns that we could potentially attack, I'll just highlight the 3. Those pawn weaknesses are what Lauren says are the cause of black's downfall. White's going to be able to activate the rook, attacking one or more of those, force black into passivity. Then you've got the extra pawn, plus you're more active and you develop a passed pawn somewhere and try to break black's position. Nevertheless, you see my plan's a little bit annoying, right, Lauren? I would go here. You would play b3, right? I mean, maybe you'd calculate c4, but it's messy, right? Like this line here is going to be, I don't know how confident you're going to be about that. Yeah, I can probably hold that. That probably doesn't work. So you're going to play b3, and then I'm going to come back here. And then when your king comes here, I'm going to come here. And if your king ever comes here, I'll come here. So you're not able to do, or you'll need a fancy way to do the second step of your plan, right? Which was to activate your rook attacking my weaknesses. You still have the c3 break to create a passed pawn, but then you're trading my weakness and you still are up one pawn without like a clear advantage other than the pawn, right? Sure. King activates the c3. And yeah, I maybe go here. This or king g6. I mean, I would really love to get my king a little bit closer. But the point is, my rook is so active, you have to calculate a non-trivial variation from here, right? So I'm getting my king here, and my rook is tying. I mean, my rook is amazing. The average rook endgame up a pawn is a draw. You need to be up a pawn and have an advantage in like activity or structure or something, something really clear on top of the pawn normally to win. So in terms of how would I continue in a rated game against someone much lower rated, Dabo, I'm showing you exactly how I would continue, right? I'd go rook b5 so that when you play b3, your c3 break later, you won't be able to get these pawns. Because look, This seems like really weird to spend a tempo on this. Oh my god! Darth Guinness played rook b5, folks. After thinking a while. And after b3, rook c5. Hey,
David.
Yeah.
David Green is here if you want to say hi briefly.
Oh, cool. Yeah, chat, why don't you just stew on that for a second? I'll be right back. no! Do you guys see what happened there? The king went back to e1, and the rook couldn't attack c2. So white got the active rook. And now white's fulfilling all their dreams, right? Same c3 break, but with the active rook. I wonder if white could do even better. We still see the value of rook b5, right? Because white can't make a protected passer. Yeah, the black rook went to f3 for false activity, Seth, basically, right? Like sometimes it just feels good to get as far as you can, right? Like, I'm in. But you're fine right there, and what should you do is centralize your king, right? Get it a little closer so that if you ever get a chance, you can cross into the middle of the board from this rook. White's passed pawn's eventually going to be on the queen side. So your king has the issue that he's got to cross the Bosphorus. He's got to cross this thing here, right? But yeah, it looks like an outpost, right? So it's like, I'm in your weak square. I'm bossing you around, right? I'm as active as I can be. I'm as far forward as I can be. But that's not really how rooks work. Knights, often yes. But here, I mean, the rook just needs to be able to shuttle between c5 and f5. Or, honestly, it could be c6, f7, and c7 to keep that rook from getting active. But interestingly, even after white's rook got active, they didn't find something better to do than to trade, even with this active king. Interesting. The dream would be to have now advanced the king somehow, right? That would be the real dream. So, two plans that would move in that direction, right? One would be you go b4, king c1, b2, b3, headed to c4. A second would be you go f3, trade this pawn, try and bring the king around through f3, and then into e4. So I left you at rook c5, right? And you're thinking about a4 for white in that position? Well, the pawn was already on a3 by then. Oh, over here you want to break. But how do you recapture that pawn? Doesn't that pawn look hard to handle? That looks like counterplay for black. So then you do this. But black now has counterplay for the king, right? If you go over here to take this pawn, black takes this one with a mess. I can also throw in this move maybe so your rook won't activate as nicely and come here, still threatening this and this. Yeah, I like this better than letting white's rook come to h5 and g5. Here black looks okay, and you don't have time to go defend this pawn with the king because black's king gets here. Has it ever happened that I just resigned because of the pressure? No, I always kept playing melt like butter. All right, so let's try and catch up with their game because, I mean, it's just a very, very interesting rook ending throughout. So let's see what's happening. g5, poking the rook. The rook has several things it wants to do. It wants to defend the f-pawn. It wants to cut the black king off from the passed pawn. right? But if it comes up, it gets kicked. So he goes to e4. Counterplay. Defends it. Okay. Push. Check. Weird to go to d3 instead of d2. Huh? Don't know what's going on. Don't know what's going on. It seems like what white should be doing is trying to move the pawn closer to queening while the king is cut off. Very good thinking, Lauren. Yeah. So as a real basic example of what Lauren's saying, at some point in the position when white was kind of passive, right? Like here. At some point, white could sack one of these two pawns to activate the rook. For example, you go here, 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 here at any point, or you could do the same thing giving up the f pawn. Lauren has to pick which one you want to sack and sort of assess how do you play the position you get afterwards, right? What are our winning prospects once we get there, right? Like rook. Oh, it's even black's move. I can come like this, yeah. Looks a little bit hard. You could play another version where you give black more counterplay, but you've got that version, by the way, sorry. I don't know if that was clear. That version that I just gave, here. No. Here. No. Okay, this version here, white's a little bit short on winning material. You see what I mean? We don't have an obvious queening pawn to win the game with. The other option is going to be play something like king d1, right? And then you go rook here. In this, we're going to give up a ton of counterplay, but we've got this duo of pawns to try and win the game with, right? But the danger is that black maybe queens quite quickly as well. You see, major, major, major counterplay. It's rather tricky to assess whether she wants to give one of these pawns for this pawn, or maybe play some version of the endgame where eventually you play c3, right? And you play like this. You can try and play this for a win, right? You are still up a pawn and the king's still cut off from your pawn. But this is the best defense I could think of for black, was to keep this rook active, make this pawn isolated. The rook's nice and active for black at least. I don't know. All right, so to the game. We got here rook e4, rook f7, rook e2. Check. The white king should be coming up to d3 and stuff, but it doesn't yet, and now it's there. Hi, Jazz Monton, and bonsoir, Elise. Or I guess it's probably not soir for you. We've got a rook endgame on our hands today, as you can all see. Okay, Mickelwald. Yeah, for different people, the benefit will be different things, right? For some people, to be able to read a book. For other people, just to visualize better. Totally. For some people, it'll be that they can actually play blindfold chess. That could be the benefit of practicing blindfold chess. My friends and I used to ride on BART, which is the sort of like subway public transportation here in the Bay Area, and we would play blindfold games with each other while riding on BART, so that was handy for us. So it'll benefit different people in different ways, but it is a skill you can acquire if you like. Hello to you as well, Ethical Grandma. You actually didn't say hi to me. That's why I didn't say hi to you. I said hi to the people who said hi to me. Or if you said hi, I didn't see it. As far as I could tell, your greeting was Mein Kampf, which is not a normal greeting. I didn't interpret it as a greeting. Just as maybe a troll trying to stir something up. We're in the same country now. Okay, bonsoir, Elise. Hi, Cartier. Rook d5. Oh! That might sting a little bit, that move white just found there. So it was rook here, looking like you're trying to be active. The king's bothered by you, but gives up the e5 square. Maybe black just needs to sit here and endure, right? But if black just endures, white can improve the position with quite a bit with king e4 next move. At least feels like white's going to gradually drift towards winning this endgame here. So if black backed up at this point, they would lose a second pawn and maybe even a third, right? Like if I avoid the rook trade, I look like I'm really going to be down 3 pawns here. So black trades. So they're still just down 1 pawn. But it looks like you eventually lose because white can go back and forth while keeping the pawn defended. King d4. If black goes here, white has this square. Looks good. And if black waits around with b6, you just go back and forth with white till the black king has to back up. Yeah, I think it's a clean win for white. Congrats to Everest Knight. And, just gradually that extra pawn slowly weighed on the whole game. The rook in game phase was very, very interesting. And a lot of credit to Darth Guinness for putting up a tough resistance and using a lot of their time to think about the moves and put up a tough resistance. But it was always close to lost ever since Darth Guinness played the knight d4 move, I think we could say. If we want to point to, why did black lose this game, I would think the number one culprit or number one reason why black lost this game was this decision right here on move 17. This move led to massive trades when black was down a pawn. And, well, welcome, Cloud. Hope you're enjoying playing in Friday Night Fights. Let us know if you've got any questions about it. I think this move just went against black's compensation for the pawn, and then they're down a pawn for nothing, or even down a pawn for nothing, plus this pawn's a little bit weak on d4, and they just gradually got weighed down. Yeah, it took a while. Good long struggle. But little by little, this extra pawn allows white to inch up the middle of the board. White's just moving back and forth, letting black run out of moves. Trade, push. White doesn't care. Just back and forth and back and forth. Allah Heron. Also, your first time here on Friday Night Fights? Welcome. Welcome. Great to have you. Hope you had a good time. Don't worry about apologizing to your opponent about that. That's like a little bit of a negative self-talk there, like that you didn't put up a good enough fight. Maybe ask your opponent what he thought about the game or she thought about the game. And maybe you'll discover that you put up a good fight, that your opponent felt it was a tough game. Seth, you lost from the winning side of one of these game pawn endings. That's unfortunate. One would, of course, hope not to do that. Hey, Sue Strain. Thanks, Courtney. It was a true chess tragedy, yeah. To lose this position here as white would be quite painful. I mean, we shouldn't be obsessed with winning every game we play, I often say, but it's also not thrilling to lose completely winning positions, right? So must have been something that could fit into a tragic comedy, yeah. Presumably, to lose as white here, yeah. So white uses the e-pawn to gain space for the king. The king then uses the space to come and eat pawns on the side. Could have done the same over this way. Just textbook from Everest Knight. Did anyone have any questions about how white won this endgame? I may have not explained the last couple moves well enough for anyone who's not clear on it. But you see, eventually black ran out of moves with the side pawns, right? That would get captured. This would be one more move, and then you'd be out of moves. So eventually, after white played king d4 like 4 times, black had to step back. White moves forward. That allows the pawn to move further forward, supported by the king, which can keep moving back and forth. The black king has to fall back again eventually. And now the white king uses its position to attack these pawns. Similar could have come here and attacked these pawns. It would also lead to a win. So eventually what you do is you can't just queen this one pawn in black's face with the king blocking it. But the pawn helps your king gain the space to advance and eventually walk off to one side or another, eat a couple pawns, and then win off of those. So here, black resigned because they're going to move back and lose another pawn, and eventually these pawns here, they will queen once you've got a couple connected passers. Oh, at least you felt bad about winning. That's a whole different level of sportsmanship. You felt bad about winning because you felt bad for your opponent. Very kind of you. How's my stream working? No glitches, no problems. It's been a couple days. Seems like there's audio and video and all that. Everest Knight. Hey, Joker Unlimited. We looked at most of your first game, so you'll be able to check the tape to see what I thought of it and compare it with what you thought of it. I did not see any other game, no Vesper the Jury. I just watched that one game so far. Mercy for the opponent beaten out of you by 2,000 plus players. Yeah, those players will just beat you. All right, shall we check out a game from the 1600 plus section, folks? We've got Najdorf Neal. That's promising. And I feel like Baymon versus Sustrain might be a pretty new game. Oh no, they've been playing a while. Let's see. Oh, this is cool. Najdorf Neal lived up to the name. This looks like a Najdorf. Looks like a Najdorf. Well, one thing you could do, Joker Unlimited, is go over the game You could look at what we talked about in the stream, and what you'll see is that we couldn't keep up with you. You were playing faster than we could talk about or think about the position and the decisions you were making. So if you go and watch how we discussed the game, that might give you some thoughts as to what you could have been thinking about when you were moving. You see what I mean? Like, it'll give you examples of what could you have been thinking about in that exact position you had, where you just sort of like made a move quickly without thinking about it. Hey, Francois. Welcome. Welcome. I imagine it's probably late for you. I think you're in somewhere in Quebec. So, pretty late. But I'm picking my next game. So this is an important moment. I have to decide which game I want to watch for the next hour or so, probably. I think Quebec is definitely still part of Canada, and there are probably some people in Quebec who would still like to secede, and some people who are happy-ish to still be part of Canada. But Francois will know more on that than I do. When I visited Quebec, it was, oh my God, 20 years ago when I spent some time in Quebec. And it was not a hot topic among chess players in Quebec. They were more interested in talking about chess than secession. And I would have remembered because I'm pretty interested in secession myself. Finished working at the hospital. Woo! Working at the hospital late into the night. That sounds challenging. What's going on here? Is white struggling to not get crushed by this queen getting attacked? Such a surprise, right? Melt like butter? I found that chess players in Quebec enjoyed talking about chess. That was their favorite subject of conversation. Yes? So Francois, who's our source on the spot, tells us the secession topic has been coming back. I'm not sure what Boondock Striker is going to do about this. Well, let's put it this way. If anybody sees a defense for white against queen b2 and rook takes queen, let us know. Seth points out that our continent could use a couple more countries. As far as I know, there's Canada, USA, Mexico. That's pretty boring. It's not enough diversity, right? I need some more diversity in my equity. Mr. Chips. Mr. Chips. And Francois tells us that also Alberta has a secession movement, so it's not only Quebec. And Dabo says that Mexico is a singular country in title, but in reality, it has a few different regions run by cartels who essentially control their territories versus the government. Wow. Is that at all an exaggeration, Dabo, or is that I just don't have much knowledge, so I'm asking you like very naively. Is that at all an exaggeration, like a strong statement, or is that like very realistic? Okay, people have a cultural identity still as Mexican in those different territories. So like, yeah, you can have sort of, Yeah, cultural identity as well as administrative identities. Melt Like Butter says, Jesse said chess rips apart all the BS, unlike other fields. In politics, you can argue about this or that. Oh, the Democrats, oh, the Republicans, this is better, that's better. But in chess, you get feedback. If your ideas are wrong, you lose, right? And that idea, comes or was stated earlier by Lasker, I think. I think Melt Like Butter, that concept that Jesse is alluding to there is familiar to most chess players from this famous quote of Emanuel Lasker, right? Where he says something about like, on the chessboard, lies and hypocrisy are, destroyed. I don't remember his quote. It's one of the famous quotes in chess, right? On the chessboard, lies and hypocrisy. Let's pull up the real quote. Lies and hypocrisy do not survive long. The creative combination lays bare the presumption of a lie. The merciless fact, culminating in checkmate, contradicts the hypocrite. Okay, it's a little highfalutin. It's not totally simple to follow. But the idea is pretty clear, right? The idea is like in chess, if what you're saying is BS, you will get checkmated. And then everyone will know that what you said was BS, right? That's that's the idea. No Feed wants Cascadia. Cool. Sounds good. Let's have Cascadia. I happen to believe, I hope this won't be a super controversial thing that gets people very upset that I strayed from talking about chess, but I happen to believe that more smaller countries would probably be better. So I like the idea of smaller political entities. Is that mild enough to not upset people too much? Okay, well, I don't see a way out for Boondock Strikers, queen, and pawn on b2. Somebody said allowing queen b2 is not terminal, but, it's essentially terminal. Like, if I play something like queen g3 and I get checked, and my king's cut off, and I have to come here, I mean, isn't that... Okay, I guess I'm not mated yet. But, okay, sorry. I have to put the queen on b4 to defend the rook on b8. But I could do something like this at a minimum, right? And white doesn't really seem... Okay, and Lauren says a global democratic government where the entire planet works together towards colonizing Moon, Mars, and the asteroid belt. Cool. I would definitely love it if people could all work together globally towards some cool goals like that. Yeah. Yeah, potentially it's a big leap to people on Earth working together, right, Elise? Lots of small countries and a global confederation, yeah. That sounds good to me. That sounds good. Okay, I'm going to look for a different game because I think this is just dead for white. Let's check in on Artemy Bolochkin. This position is pretty fascinating. White is down a piece, but has a fair pressure against the black king. Every white piece is well placed. You want to retire on the moon because it'll be good for your knees. I believe, no vest for the dreary, that Steve Nash's 20-minute workout is probably super focused while playing. That's my suspicion. Black is up really a full piece, but this is the kind of position that gets easily messed up, actually. Because it's hard not to allow a tactic by white by accident. That's true. In the chess world, Quebec has successfully seceded from Canada because there's the Fédération Québécoise des Échecs as well as the Canadian Chess Federation. The moon is basically a bouncy castle. Why wouldn't we want to live there? I mean, I guess here are my thoughts, Lauren. It might be cold. It might lack air to breathe. Oh, and plants. I love plants. But I understand the attraction of a bouncy castle. All right, so if we take on h7, it's covered. If we take on g6, it's covered, but just barely. If black absolutely needed it... Oh, sorry, wrong way. I'll take like this. If black absolutely needed it and didn't have the queen here, then after queen g6, you could maybe win with rook c1 check. Rook c1 hg. You see? So, yeah, so white can't, just take or do any kind of a breakthrough at the moment. They need to just keep the game going for now. A bit more here. Queen e4 could make sense, centralizing the queen and getting in touch with the e5, so the black queen has to keep that guarded. I didn't see a follow-up after bishop f7, so that's why I didn't yet suggest queen e4 as anything in particular, but it's certainly a candidate move. It's playable. White could also try to win this pawn, like with a rook or a queen or something. Being on the long diagonal for the queen does also give her access to a8, so she's just got a couple more things going on there. Maybe you could try and put the knight on e5. I don't know. But Melt Like Butter says there would be bishop c6 immediately here. There's one or two complicated lines after this, right? There's rook h7 and there's knight g6. Oh, but this rook's still here. Oh, I was thinking of like something really funky like this. That's where I was off visualizing. But black can leave the knight on g6 actually and use this rook. So there's nothing here, I don't think. In the 1600 plus arena, we've got like 4 or 5 games active. There's at least 10 people playing right now, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 people playing right now. So that's pretty good. That means there might not be that many people waiting for a game, since so many of them are in a game. A pretty exciting game here as well. Okay, so white chose queen e2, targeting the g-pawn. That was on my horizon. Good evening, Summoner. Yeah, no best for the jury. G takes f6 is plausible in the D takes e4 French variations. Well, that's the history of when Quebec founded the Quebec Federation, Francois? It was in protest against cheating. Interesting. Okay, so Steve Nash plays rook a4, suggesting an attack is brewing against white's king while white's trying to recapture this pawn here. I mean, no vest for the jury, probably not, right? Like, if you're going to play knight d7 as black in your variation, it's logical to then recapture an f6 with the knight. That's the point of knight d7. So, the g takes f6 structure can be playable. There are people who like it more or less for white or for black. But your moves still should sort of go together, right? They should coordinate. They should relate to each other. So that move order with knight d7, if you then don't take on f6 with the knight, is an odd move order that won't be best. Because then you're going to play b6 or something, and white will play queen f3 or something, or bishop b5, and you won't be able to control the squares just right. I mean, it's a very committal move order. So I don't know how bad it is, but I'm pretty certain that it's subpar. Is that fair to say? Have I backed up my argument enough to say what I say? You want to imbalance the game? Just play knight f6 without knight d7 then, right? That would make more sense. Yep, that line you just cited is a main line, so it makes more sense. You can also literally play knight c3, d4, knight e4, knight f6, gf6 if you want to play that, right? It was the move knight d7 that just didn't make sense in your line. Right, on move 4 in the first line you gave me, you played knight d7 instead of just knight f6. If you're going to play gf6, just play gf6. But the other line you gave with bishop g5, bishop e7, that line is a very popular line. Or, I mean, not very popular. That's a reasonably popular line. I've had it several times in tournament games. The issue with that line is that a lot of people will play e5 for white instead of bishop g5, right? So if you really want to play d4 French, you might need to play d4 on move 3 and then knight f6 right away. Trying to avoid closed positions, yeah. It's a little bit odd that you would be playing the French if you're trying to avoid closed positions. The French is most often played by people who like closed positions. But I guess it can be done. I guess you can do that. All right, so now white has one pawn against the bishop, and black is gathering storms around white's king. So black's calculating, does queen a6 checkmate white, basically. That's black's current task. Cool, Summoner. I heard a rumor that Hammer had a new opening course out. And maybe we should ask ourselves the same question that Steve Nash has been pondering for 3 minutes. Does queen e6 checkmate white? Is that the end of our time enjoying this game here? I mean, rook h7 looks pretty lost. Knight g6, bishop g6 looks lost. I don't think white has any breakthroughs on these squares. And then this looks like mate, and the king's cut off. So this looks kind of like the end of the game to me. And there it is. Okay, so Steve Nash converted this game without a hiccup, even though I said that these situations can be risky. He cleaned this one up very, very quickly from where we were watching and just started with just activating pieces, right? Cutting off the white king, then switching to the other file. Fair enough. Clean kill. All right, let's look at this game here for a bit. Soustrain and Beimon. So what do we think of this situation? The pawn structures are weird, so it may take a moment to recognize that the pawns are equal. So a big question is, is this H pawn good or bad? All right, looks like white is going to trade into an endgame here. And in a middle game, the H pawn is scarier. In an endgame, the white king might just go eat it. Look, white's trying to trade this rook, saying if you trade rooks, then there's nothing to stop king h2, king h3. And if you move your rook away, then white might, to keep the h pawn defended, then Beimon might be planning something like rook d7, making use of the open file, get into the 7th rank, and the rook is pretty strong there, right? So this was like a deep think on bishop b7. And then when white goes for it, a bunch of instantaneous moves afterwards, which I highly approve of. That Beimon had a plan. Okay, so black could trade the rook themselves, move the rook away, leave the rook where it is, play rook d3. Black's queenside majority looks dangerous. Yeah, while white's saying, like, I'm going to win one pawn on h3. You could win the pawn on h3 and still lose the queenside majority, right? So you could imagine, like, I think it's actually, well, instead of being fancy with b4, I'll put the knight there and say the knight's not that good. King here. Ay, look at where that black king got while I was taking h3. Yeah, Seth, I was being a little funny about the rook on the 7th rank. It was very concrete. Oh man, taking h3 took too long. This king is just winning the game. I assume. I haven't calculated anything, but I mean, I've never seen somebody survive a king like this. So that was interesting, right? I traded for black, buying into white's concept. Then I played b4 to just keep the knight where it is. I don't know if maybe just running the king is even better. But to some extent, you know, white can always check you here. And then you're like, oops, I should have played b4. So I think, you know, b4 looks pretty good against the knight on d1, right? Yeah, of course, Seth. You're right. You're right to check. But that's just another example of my humor. My deadpan, people can't tell if I'm just an idiot or not, humor. And then someday when I hang a piece, they won't know for sure if I'm hanging a piece or being humorous. Okay, we've got a move, I think. Rook takes d1, executed by Sustrain, and the king makes his first move. Beimon rushes towards the h-pawn. Beimon's very confident in the thinking done in that long think. They've made every move instantly since taking on b7. The immediate b4 Lalit might have been as good as rook d1. Oh, you want to take on c3? Oh, let me calculate your line. Look, b4 played now, right? Because Sustrain sees king d5, knight c3 check. I agree with that. King h3 played, king d5. So here folks are wondering about knight f2. Beimon may stop and think now they've completed the plan of capturing this pawn and now have to watch out for this plan of the king just owning you. Sure, Artemi. Gladly. Quickly, we're going to check Lalit Prasad's suggestion here, and then we're going to check the end of this end game. And then we can look at your game, Artemi. So, the question is, can black play b4, rook takes, pawn takes? Oh my goodness. So if white comes back, you take here, here, and then bishop a3 and c2. And if white checks, here, here, takes, and queens. Wow. This move might just win tactically, actually. White doesn't have choices, because if the knight moves, you lose the rook. So b4 might have been an absolute knockout, Lalit. Yeah. Little bit of an ouchie right there. Let's grab the position and put it in the puzzles database. I just like to clip little calculation positions, you know, little exercises, end games, and anything that strikes me as being a cool puzzle. So let's see. All right. Yeah, good job, Lalit. Thanks for pointing that out. That was super cool. Now let's go to the game. King d5. White is thinking about knight f2. Knight f2 way before, Francois says. Oh, you take the h-pawn with the knight instead of the king, probably, right? Because it might be faster. So I think this is where Francois is thinking knight f2. And I think the issue with knight f2 here, Francois, I mean, there's two issues, but to me, the first one would be bishop c5. And, yeah. What to say? for white is hard to give a good advice after bishop c5, right? If the knight goes to h3, then after bishop check, the knight is kind of stuck here. Maybe you could walk the king over and bring the knight through here. Yeah. Maybe I'm condemning white a little bit too soon. Black goes here, 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 here. Long variation, wrong variation, but white has survived. They're eventually going to lose this endgame, but they avoided a knockout, and that was complicated, and there might be other options along the way. So actually, that wasn't so easy. Let me try another move, king d5. Idea here is against knight h3 to play king here and here faster. This move looks pretty strong, king d5, right? Very simple move. I don't see any moves for white here. I haven't looked very hard. But I don't see anything. Because if the king comes towards the center, black plays h2, and the pawn's still alive. And still really, really annoying. And if you play a move like knight here, king e4 should win. And there's also this fancy, fancy move, which should also win, right? Bishop here. And yeah. I would just play king e4. Because it's so hopeless. If you think king f1, h2, don't you think that's eventually dead? You just can't deal with this pawn. You think you can come here, defend this pawn, and just sit here with the knight like this, huh? You should eventually lose. You should eventually lose as white here with this knight just defending this. You can't move the knight. If you ever play e4 later, there will be bishop takes knight, so you can't do that. Yeah, should just eventually lose. Black will advance the queenside majority, and your king has to defend e3 and this. Can't do it forever. Let's see. Has white made a choice in the game? King g2. All right, so black's got their moment to play king e4 or something else. But king e4 would be kind of the point of what black has in this game. Frankly, the only move I see is king e4. So, unfortunately, it looks like Beimon initiated a very interesting idea, which was losing for white, even though it was a super cool concept from white. So let's look at it again for a moment. This was the moment. Beimon was thinking a long time. We're wondering about the h-pawn. White's king seems to be in danger. It feels like the h-pawn is a little bit of an attacking unit in the middle game, but in an endgame, you could just, it's often like a weak pawn you can attack. White thought down those lines and said, yeah, I'm going to trade everything off, and look at the detail with which white thought it. The rook and the second rook, saying if you trade rooks, nobody can defend this, and you can't avoid the rook trade because of rook d7. But the timing was wrong for white. They just don't have the time to go take that pawn with the king. As black gets the king into d3, and then d2, and then the c-pawn winning. Yeah, these games are chess.com rated chess pawn, as they're played on chess.com. Maybe there was a better way to execute the same idea. Like maybe here, you don't initiate that next trade yourself. Maybe you play a3. Yeah, if it looks fun, give it a try someday, Chesspawn. It's a 24-hour arena, but I think most people play between 8 p.m. and midnight Pacific time. So basically around now, which is when I'm usually available to do the commentary. So most people tend to clump around this time to play. And although it's set up as a 24-hour arena, the point chess pawn is just to play one good game a week. You know, it's not to play for well, it is to play for hours, but it's not to play game after game. The idea is, you know, sit down, play one serious game once a week. You've got something to think about and analyze for the rest of the week. And you just get like a good solid practice against another serious opponent. You know, just most of these people will give you a post-mortem too. Like they'll talk about the game with you afterwards if you want. All right. So in moments, I think Baymon will lose here, and then we're going to look at your game, Artemi. Here we are. The king's got an in, and Baymon's contemplating, like, you had this great concept, and your great concept leads to the opponent winning, right? It just doesn't seem fair, but so it goes in chess. It truly does work like this. Come up with great concepts that just lose by force. That's a good lesson. It's a good lesson. Often when you initiate things, that's how you lose a game. Sometimes it's how you win a game, but it's also equally sometimes how you lose a game. Chess is like that. I'm going to go downstairs and grab some dinner and bring it up here, and then we'll look at Artemi's game. That should be enough time for Baymon to resign, right? If I go reheat some of my lunch for dinner. I won't be long. Just microwave cooking. right, my lunch is turning into dinner. Chess is hard and beautiful. Yes, it is. Here you're seeing the full power of an advanced king in an endgame. Nothing has happened while I was gone, right? It's just white coming to terms. Coming to terms. Okay, I'm going to start getting Artemy's game ready. So that's going to be this game here. Does it show up properly? Yeah, shows up properly. So that's this game here. Okay, so we'll check that out very soon. Prabhav with a similar issue as Artemy, saying I got an advantage in my game but couldn't convert and lost it. Artemy also says that they had the advantage and lost it. Yeah, my lunch is turning into dinner, Artemy, in the sense that at lunchtime I tried to eat my lunch and then suddenly wasn't hungry. And so now I'm reheating it and I'm going to try eating it as dinner. It's weird. It was very weird that I wasn't hungry when I tried to eat my lunch, because I felt hungry before I sat down and started eating it, and I had missed breakfast. So it would have been logical for me to be hungry. Hopefully by now I'm hungry. Sounds like the cooking is done. Great thought. I didn't cook this. I went to a restaurant. All right. Well, it's taking a long time for white to resign this. Let's have a look at Artemy's game. So out of the opening here, it's a pretty normal situation so far. White has some potential in the H-file. Black has some potential with the bishop pair, but black's a little bit constrained in terms of space. Excellent, Prabhav. Good work finding good opening moves on your own. This is, by the way, veggie masala. It's like mixed vegetables in a delectable curry. I'm very, very lucky to have it. So Steve Nash here goes G6 and F5, gaining space to defend the king with pieces. But also pawn moves on this side give black, some ability to either find outpost squares or make pawn breaks. So, two-sided sword. All right, presents wrapped. Good for you. Excellent. Queen A5. Okay, so now you're going to do the doubling. Black is still trying to coordinate their pieces, and now the queen gets kind of stuck out here and can't get back. That's weird, that queen A5, right? Like, you might have been better off as black just playing B6, bishop B7, or A6 or whatever. So putting the queen out here and then kind of locking her out there is a little bit odd. White tries to break through with G4. Nice move. It looks like FG, bishop G6 is probably winning for white. Yeah, I can confirm it's winning for white. After pawn takes, queen takes, rook G7, there's mate in 1. And king F8, also mate in 1. So, I mean, that basically leaves pawn takes knight as maybe a candidate move, and then trying to run with this king. It's hard to believe. Oh, sorry. Let's go straight for here. Just take another pawn. Why don't we? We're trying to just tear apart the king as we chase him. So black's not going to be able to defend the king now, right? Not be able to coordinate the rook on a8, bishop on c8, etc. So this should be winning here. Sorry, fight's not going to work for you, Lakinther. You need to find your way if you want to play to Chess Dojo events, like for example here. Okay, so yeah, I'm convinced that g4 was sound here. Francois says maybe you could play g4 the moment the queen goes over here, g4. Idea pawn takes, bishop takes. There's a good chance that works as well. Yeah, Francois. There's a good chance. But I don't think that doubling was wrong by Artemi. Nothing wrong with doubling. Like, it's not like you won't be able to play g4 now, is it? Well, maybe if black played knight f6, it would be harder. No, if the knight ever goes to f6, you get knight g5 or e5, right? And you can still break through. You're worried about h5. Yeah, I mean, if you play g4, it also stops h5. But Francois over on the YouTube chat is saying that maybe g4 is already very strong, and I'm saying, but it can't be bad to double rooks, right? Wherever you lost control of this game, Artemi, it was not here when you doubled rooks. Like, I think all this is fine for you, and Steve Nash is saying that, you know, he ended up regretting the queen a5 move. So yeah, so up to here, everything's going pretty well for white, I would say. g4 here is a very strong move. So good job finding that one. Knight retreats. Knight e5 coming in. Looks great. Here. Knight c6. Oh my god. Oh, you're doing really, really great here. This hits the queen. Oh my god, you just won some pawns here. Knight e5. Super. Oh, it's going super well. Oh my goodness. So I wonder if, you know, you could throw in g takes f here. You've got a lot of moves possible now. Things are going super, super well for you at this moment. This is probably like the best your position ever was. And then you probably were a mix of like excited and so many options, it's hard to choose exactly what's the best way to win. Just a vague guess. And then we'll see. I like that move. And now there's counterplay on the c file. You try to stop b5. Oh, and he just insists on playing it anyway. Wow. Wow, this counterplay got real in just like one move. And boom, suddenly it's there, right? Out of control. And the interesting thing is this knight on f8 just kills all your attacking stuff. So your pieces are suddenly not that well coordinated for what happens here. Man, oh man. I hear you, Dyserxia. Okay. So let's do something better with this position here. First of all, I don't actually love trading on e7. It's not terrible. It's not terrible to trade on e7, but I don't love it. It's not my first instinct. Like, I feel your knight is really powerful. So my first instinct is to maybe hold the tension here. You know, this move order here, veggie masala melt like butter. A mixed vegetable curry. Okay. Here's my reasoning with pawn takes f5 right here. If black takes this way, then this pawn here on f5 will be creaky after pawn takes pawn. Right? If they play queen b7 like in the game, you could take, take, take. And that pawn's very, very weak, right? If not, just immediately dead. Now black has no g-pawn sheltering this diagonal, so the king's more open and your pieces remain stronger on this diagonal. With non, yeah. I don't know a name for the knight on f8 other than, you know, knight on f8, there is no mate kind of saying. So that looks very promising, right? So alternatively, when you take here, black takes this way. And now what I'm going to suggest, Artemi, is maybe don't play CD and double your pawns and open the C file. Maybe just stick the second knight in the middle of the board here. And just keep the knights. Actually, this one won't be protected by a pawn. Maybe I should trade and go here. Threaten knight f6. Rook comes here. And Sustrain, I only looked at your game starting around when Baemon took on b7. Melt like butter. All I know is I eat it by putting it in my mouth. I'm not sure what the way is to eat it or not eat it. I wonder, Artemi, if you could play g4 again. But you don't necessarily need to play g4 here. You've got 2 extra pawns, and the file is still nice and closed. There's not really counterplay from black, and your remaining knight is on a great square. So you can already see here that you're in good shape. But if you could play g4, it would be even more clear that this is really good, right? So g4, fg4, bishop takes, knight takes, rook takes, pawn takes, queen takes, king here, mate, rook here, mate. Oh my god. Who knew that whole thing could be sound, huh? What about b3 stay solid? We could play a move that stays solid, Prabhav, if we're not winning. But as Francois says, it's mating. If we're checkmating black, then other moves are going to be less good than checkmate. Also, how solid is b3? If you sack a pawn in front of your king with b3. To me, that doesn't seem super solid. Like, solid, boring moves here would be like king b1, g3, rook h4, so I'm not overcommitted. You know? But the first move we should look at is g4. Artemi played g4 at a good time, and it was crushingly good, but Steve Nash kept defending, lost 2 pawns, and just kept defending. Here's a second chance to play g4. I think Artemi would definitely be able to think of this move and look at it, because I thought of it thanks to Artemi. To me, it looks super powerful. It seems that if black takes, taking on g6 is a knockout, which means instead black's looking at a move like, I don't know, queen b7, pawn takes, bishop takes, pawn takes. But this is horrid, right? This is horrid for black. Their king's been opened up. White's clarifying the structure, breaking black's pawn structure up a little bit. We've got control of f6, so the knight can come in now. Oh, yeah, and that's the end. Once the knight comes in, I can take on f5 too. Oh, but the knight can't come in because there's rook f6. Yeah, we still have to be careful, see? Stay careful, everybody. It doesn't matter how crushing you are. You still have to stay careful. It's not guaranteed that you win. You know, you have to find the winning moves. You can't just think you're crushing. All right, let's get out of the way of the queen. h7 was super well defended. Do you see that? 4 of black's pieces are defending h7. 4 out of 5 pieces. So let's stop trying to take h7 and switch to the open file. King here. Now I will play knight f6, threatening rook g8 mate. Knight g6 to block the rook. And then rook takes g6 to take the knight for free. Yeah. Okay, nice and winning. Nice and winning from white. Okay, so Artemi says there are some, you don't know as many patterns as me, right? When I go through some of these variations a little bit quickly, so to speak, you're like, oh, I wouldn't see all of those ideas that fast. They're not just like stuff that I know. You'd have to search for them and stuff. Yeah, that's fair, right? Obviously, we all have different levels of experience. But hopefully there's some interesting thought here on your game, right? So one thought is that, like, interestingly, trading on f5 before deciding what to do on d5, you know that your g-pawn here, it's kind of useless. You just want to trade it for one of your opponent's pawns. So we actually just get that g-pawn off the board, right? And then how we play in the center will depend on which way the opponent takes back. It's a really big choice for black, right? Between weakening their king or weakening their center. And they have to choose. And another interesting point maybe in everything I've looked at, Artemi, was that sometimes you might want to keep the knight on c6. Sometimes you might want to trade it. It's a little case by case. Sometimes it could come back. But we definitely found some variations where it's kind of one-sided winning for white, right? Like there's not much that can go wrong for you. We're not taking big risks. Even though I'm playing some sacrificial moves, right? Like, what did I do? Like here, I played here. This may look sacrificial, but it's really safe in a certain sense because we can calculate all the options for the opponent, right? And kind of rule them out or know what we want to do exactly against them. Like, technically you're down a rook for one move, but you're also checkmating one move later. So to me, that's not a huge risk, right? It's a matter of going after the opponent a little bit there. Okay, so Prabhav is begging us to look at their game. What do you say, chat? Should we look at another game that's already done? Oh, this was a Najdorf. I saw a little bit of this game. Prabov did have the advantage against Najdorf Neil in this game. Okay. And Prabov, you're probably wondering if I approve of trading your good bishop for their bad bishop to go after the d6 pawn, huh? That's sort of the interesting question here. White's certainly better right here, right after you trade into the endgame. Your main advantage is your knight. So I suppose if that were traded, if we gave black a move, like if I played something like h3 that wasn't really precise and black could play knight f6. Good night, Francois. Yeah, get that sleep. You need it. Good to see you. The trade could erase White's advantage pretty much in one shot. Now, that said, this move doesn't necessarily force the trade. White still has this idea. And the game is still going. You could still argue White's better, right? Okay. But so, okay, from White's perspective, the advantage is mostly this well-placed knight and a little bit the potential of this pawn majority on the queen side. Prabov went bishop g5, which I probably wouldn't have even thought of. Trying to trade this bishop to go after this pawn. And in the game, it worked a charm, I think, at first, because black traded. And, against knight d6, there was rook f2, I remember. So White brought the rook out to defend that pawn. Won the pawn. Hung a knight? What? Oh, because if you move the knight, there's knight e4. Oh, you didn't really win the pawn. Najdorf Neil with the Najdorf experience. That was very tricky. Ay. You're better off losing an exchange than giving that whole knight, no? Ay. But in any case, there's been a mistake here. Melt like butter. Sometimes I tear my naan into pieces, and sometimes I eat it. Sometimes I put a bunch of food on my naan like this, and then I kind of fold it and hold a lot of food together on my naan like that. It depends. Hard to judge right now because I'm also broadcasting with the same hand. Wow, that was sneaky of Neil. Oh, man. So Neil kind of actually saved the game with this brilliant line here. That was a really strong move because if you can't go to g5 at the moment, if you back off, oh, man. I mean, it's kind of an oh, man moment from Prabov's side, but Neil, go you, Neil. Go you. You're welcome, Artemi. That was really nice, Neil. The Najdorf experience showing through. Look at him calmly b6, just leaving that pawn. Like, it's all okay. It's all okay. Okay, so you were thinking knight f5, knight here, knight h6, king here, and then you were out of things to do, right? Yeah, for sure. For sure. The knight doesn't have a lot of squares to go to. But like for argument's sake, let's say you go c5 Prabov. Pawn takes c5 and save the knight here. They play knight e4. You play rook takes e5. They take and you take. This endgame here is not good for White, right? It's not good for White. But it's better than losing the piece. Yeah, I'm going to go back to the queen trade in a second. I just want to mention this since we're here. You've got more chances of saving the game with a knight against a rook than down a knight. So, just for what it's worth, I want to point that out since I see that moment in the game. Now, let's go back. Your opponent was very good. Very good. Knew what he was doing. What do you want to know about the queen trade? You want to know if you're right to trade queens, or or how to play after the queen trade? Two big questions. By the way, Prabhav, if I were to annotate this game myself, like if I played it, if I were you and I played this game, I might only ask myself one of those two questions, work on it for 30 to 60 minutes, and then be done annotating my game, basically. You know? Like you could just ask yourself, should white have traded queens here? And then you just play out as many moves as you want, trying to figure out the answer to that one question. Or you play the queen trade and ask yourself, how should white have played this position, right? Should white have gone for b4, c5, or rook c1, or bishop g5 like you did, or king e2 to d3? And that would be my only question, just how to play this position here as white. I would pick one question or the other and just work on that. So pick one of the two and I'll try to answer one of the two for you. And then as homework, you could try to answer the second question. How's that? I'll answer one question for you if I can, and then you try to answer the other question. It might, Seth, yeah. And to an extent, Seth, that if I had to answer one of those two questions, I might have to start with the second one. You know, I might have to start with how to play the endgame. And once I understand how I should play the endgame and how good the endgame is, then I might go back another day if I have time and ask myself, you know, so should I have traded into the endgame or not? Okay. So how to play after knight e4 in the game from my side is Prabhav. Okay, so how should white play this position? Starting here. Okay, I'm going to guess, Prabhav, that bishop g5 is wrong. Trying to trade this, and I'm going to look at alternatives to it. Okay, I mean, I understand you had this idea to go after d6. It's very clever. At the same time, your bishop seems like a better bishop than your opponent's, and I feel like the game could come to you. You don't have to go chasing after that. You're also anchoring f2, which reduces counterplay. You're stopping knight c5. If they play b6, it's under fire. The queen side, you have this advantage, and your bishop's attacking that way. And knight f6, you'll often have knight g5. So So I'm feeling comfortable keeping your bishop at first. So I want to focus on your pawn majority. And my rook on g1 is not helping at all with that. So I'm thinking I want at least one rook on c1. I probably want my rooks connected. Probably want my king on e2, just so the rooks can work together. Question is, do I want rooks on c1 and d1 or b1 and c1? Because there are some positions where, like if your rooks are on c1 and d1, you can play c5, and when they take, you play d6. And then the rooks are good, and you're able to recapture on c5, and the rooks are really powerful. There are other positions where you want the rooks here, and you go b4, c5, and both pawns are defended by the rooks. I think c1 and d1 is going to be good enough, and rook c1 is going to pack the most punch, and then this rook can follow up later if I need it. So, do you see, Prabhav, how I've sort of assessed the prospects of every one of the white pieces, and then come up with like a first hypothesis of how I want to play the position from white? When I analyze, there's a mix of different things I can do. I can start looking at moves, or I can guess what's right, or I can survey the position and sort of see what the main factors are, and then use that to come up with an idea to pursue. Okay, good game, Boondock Striker. There will be Saturday Rapid tournaments tomorrow morning, as per usual. Yep. We'll have the Saturday Rapids. Okay, Lauren says, what about h4? If they take, you get d6, which is good. And if they don't take, she wants to go h5, h6, and poke at black's king position. That's reasonable, Lauren. My first thought is, like, that's not where white's strongest, so it's not my first instinct to look over there, but I also don't see anything wrong with the plan. I see how it might bother black. Black's not so overwhelmingly strong on the king side that the h-pawn might not bother them. So I'm not going to reject your idea for the moment, even though it doesn't strike me as, like, probably the best. Well, I'm not done, Prabhav. We're gonna once you come up with an idea, then you play out moves and you iterate on it, right? So I'm gonna try rook c1 and see where it leads. So for black, I'm expecting rook c8 myself, but rook c8 is sort of like agreeing with white about what's going on. Yeah, I understand, Lauren. We're not going to attack. It's the endgame, right? You're just, the h-pawn is limiting black's options. Poking, finding, maybe weakening their offensive options versus creating offensive options for white on the king side. But I will say that if you've got the advantage on the queen side and the center, and you want the advantage on the king side as well, or as you put it, you're winning in all three areas, that might be a little bit greedy of you. Sometimes chess is not that easy. Like sometimes you don't have an option of having the advantage everywhere on the board and crushing your opponent. You might like to, and everyone might like to, but more often than not in chess, there's some area on the board where your opponent's relatively strong, and you can't just reverse that by force of willpower and by the force of you want to have the advantage. Like, they'll objectively have some part of the board where they've got a pawn majority or some space or a well-placed piece or something, and you might be better off playing in the areas where you're already strong. Okay, so let's look at rook c1 a little. Yeah, we all have our proclivities, right? The things we like to do. So you like to dominate everything. And that probably works sometimes and other times doesn't. Yeah. Good night, Steve Nash. See you next time. This knight here looks good, but we can't really play c5 very well with the knight here, can we? So what are we doing next? I don't know what I'm doing. You're welcome, Prabhav. Oh, do you live in India now and you're planning to move to the US? I'm glad I tested myself with knight f6. It's not obvious what I want to do here. You might want to work with Chess Dojo. Oh, that's sweet, Prabhav. Cool. Very cool. This knight f6 move is stopping me in my tracks immediately. Yes, Lakinter, knight g5, e6 is obvious, but it doesn't seem super strong. It's obvious, but I don't see what to do after I play it. Maybe don't do anything, just sit on it. Continue coordinating my piece. The issue looking through is that the knight here doesn't really help us play c5, right? The d pawn is generally hanging, and the knight doesn't control c5 or d6. The knight was actually better on e4 for the c5 plan. So from here, I'm having trouble making progress, but I'll just play a simple move. And if black comes after me with, let's say, b5, I'll just play b3 and hold the structure for now, I guess. Rook c8. Then maybe I could surprisingly take because of the c file, right? And we win. So black actually can't go rook c8. So let's not play b5 for black. We'll go here. I'll play b3. Now black's just kind of sitting. They can't really make their position much better, can they? Do this, maybe? Play here. Yeah, white's still pleasantly better, I guess, even though we're not doing anything immediately special. f3 could be a decent sitting move, yeah. I'm thinking of f4 to open up the area where my knight is strong a little bit, right? And maybe get some more ability to bring this rook here at some point and pressure these points. Lauren would say maybe, you know, I should consider h4 at some point as well. At some point I need to attack something. I need some kind of a plan, right? So the idea with f4 is maybe my bishop will get some more targets to attack. And so I'll put my king on d3, defending the structure, and then this rook will come to e1 or f1. Yeah, white has a lasting edge. But it's also not completely crushing. Yeah, I could maybe afford to slow down even more there, Lauren, yeah. Yeah, a fair point. Okay. You guys want to try c5 on the first move? Something totally different? See how that looks? So black can again play knight f6, ignoring us, weirdly enough. But here... Ay, that doesn't work. Huh. I think c5 is fine after c3 summoner, yeah. There's many moves that are fine after c3. You have pretty free reign as black after white plays c3 on move 1. Okay, nothing super clear against knight f6. Funny. Now let's try takes, push, here. Instinct move is rook d1, b6. A little risky for white, yeah. I don't think we need to do that, Fondo. Our bishop is also better than black's pieces, so we shouldn't be rushing to trade any of those pieces. The knight on e6 is already pretty uncontested there. So, yeah, I don't like doing that. I think we should improve the king and the rooks and maybe find somewhere to advance the pawns in that position you're asking about. Okay, so c5 was unconvincing. We could also just start with the most calm and simple move of all, right? King e2. Yeah, my pawn sack line was risky, Lauren. I agree. I just felt, this is my thought process. I thought before spending 20 moves preparing c5 and 2 hours analyzing it, we should just check c5 and see if it works or doesn't work to begin with. Because if c5 here just works, imagine finding that out after you've already spent 2 hours like looking at how to prepare it. You know what I mean? So that's my take on these moves. It's like you can analyze rook c1 and king e2 and b4 for 2 hours, and then you find out that c5 wins in the starting position, or it doesn't win, but clear advantage +1 or something. So it's worth checking. Okay, well, to me, Prabhav, there's nothing super concrete here. I've convinced myself that white has an advantage kind of no matter what you do. And I would start with either king e2 or rook a c1. I think those two moves are really good. You should play them in one order or the other. And you probably have an advantage for white. Now, we could get deeper into it. Normally, I would spend about an hour on this. And I've maybe given you 10 or 15 minutes. So I would normally go deeper. But we got a little bit of a start and a taste for how I would look at such things. So hopefully that's helpful for you. You can sort of think about. Hopefully there was something in there that, is useful for your thought processes. All right. Hey, Alex plays. Can I please make some more visualization sessions? Yeah, maybe at some point. But I've got a lot of stuff to do. I don't know exactly when I will get to that. We shall see. Let's see if there are any more exciting games going on, right? Cool. This makes you wonder if giving pigeon might be no best for the dreary, right? Because Novest was asking about how to play g takes f6 in the French, and here we get it straight up. Bum rush to gf6 from black. We get exactly the line that we were talking about an hour ago or 45 minutes ago here in chat. Okay, so this play from black is very consistent. gf6, making this pawn mass, then attacking white center from the other side, keeping this pawn mass kind of flexible and an area of a kind of strength for black. Now black has to trade. Well, now a queen trade is suggested, and it's probably not really worthwhile for black to avoid it, to go through contortions avoiding it. Have you seen my 2 videos on the subject already, Alex, that are on YouTube? And you want more, or have you not seen them yet? I don't really know of any other courses. I don't really know if like courses on the subject. I mean, just practicing calculation exercises on a daily basis is how most people get better at it. But maybe you need somebody to suggest to you how to do those exercises. I'm sure there are Summoner, but Alex Plays is asking, can I suggest a course? So basically, is there a course that I know that's good? And I don't know any course that's good on Chessable. I know there are lots of courses. I just can't personally recommend them. Oh my goodness, Black got forfeited by chess.com here. It has to be good to be sold, right? No? How many terrible things are sold in the world? You can leave the messages. You don't have to always delete your messages. But that one's kind of funny. Have you never bought anything that you thought wasn't good afterwards? Alright, I'm going to try and find a video for Alex Plays real quick. Looks like this game ended before it could really get started. I'm looking forward to listening to the song Take Me Home Country Drones. If anyone wants to know what I'll be doing after my show, before I go to sleep, I will be probably listening to this song here on YouTube. I can't post anything on Twitch right now. Anyway, okay, so I'm trying to find for our friend the 2 videos I did on blindfold training. I think this is the first one here. And then there should be a second one. There's step 2. Step 2. All right, so there you go. Alex Plays, 2 videos from me. Oh, that's great to hear, Prabhav. Thank you. I wish you a great day as well, and to all your friends. Yeah. Woo! Love it. Prabhav, did you hear that this month, for the first time on Chess Dojo, we have more Indians than any other country? US was always our top country before in terms of like people watching our YouTube videos and streams and stuff. And this is the first month that we've got more viewers from India than from the US. Wow. Yeah, I guess Take Me Home Country Drone is a play on Take Me Home Country Road. Yeah. Okay, let's see if there are any more games. I'm not seeing them here. Let's go to Chess Dojo Club. Under 1600. Any current games? Looks like there are no more current games. Which is fine. Which is totally fine. It just means I will maybe say goodnight and set up the tournaments for tomorrow. The problem is all right, 1 second, Deep Space Bear. Problem is I can't post the links on Twitch. That's annoying. No, Alex, I've never been to India. I really want to go to India at some point. Independent of the fact that India is now into chess. Like, I wanted to go to India before there was a chess boom in India. It has nothing to do with chess. But I'm like excited and afraid. I really love Indian food, but I'm afraid that if I eat Indian food in India, maybe I'll get sick, because I've heard that when people travel to India for the first time, they often get sick because your body's like used to whatever, the dirt and the soil in your country, and I don't know. Why do I want to go there? Well, it's it's the most important country in the world that I've never been to, I guess. You know, the huge and important country. And also Indian food is like one of my favorite foods. I like vegetarian food as a vegetarian person. And yeah. I'm interested in a lot of places. I'm interested in how human culture is different in different countries. So there's a lot of places I'd like to go. Lots of places I'd like to go. But I guess I'm sometimes a little more interested in some like super, big important countries like India, Brazil. But then also sometimes very unimportant countries, like from a certain perspective. Like I'm obsessed with Bolivia, and that's not like a global political superpower. I have no OTB tournament planned right now, unfortunately. I'm just on household duty at the moment. All right, so Deep Space Bear. If you have a problem with blitz addiction. I can't even send it? It's so annoying. Can you find this?
Greetings, everybody.
This video here yourself. Sorry. This The Dangers of Chess is what it's called. Can you watch that video for me, Deep Space Bear? That's my video. It's called The Dangers of Chess. It's on YouTube, posted from the Chess Dojo channel. That's the video, the most important chess video I've ever made. And the goal of me making that video was to help people not be addicted. It was to help people have a healthy relationship towards chess and be able to control their egos. Yeah, up till 2 a.m. last night playing Bullet in 3-0. Look, I've been there, and probably 90+% of the people here have been there. So we can identify with that. And it's great if you've identified that as something that you don't want to be doing till 2 a.m. every day, right? So I would really like to be able to help you with that. My first suggestion would be to watch that video of mine and then come back and talk to me about it on another stream. Okay? Right now I'm going to end the stream for tonight. I'm going to set up the rapid tournaments for tomorrow, for Saturday morning. For me, it's Friday night. Tomorrow will be Saturday morning. But please watch that video, and then let's have a conversation if you want to talk about it more. But I hope that will be a start for you. Right. So yeah, a very interesting comment from Lauren Deep Space Bear, right? And you can also talk to people other than me. I'm sure there are other people in chat right now who've played more Bullet than they wanted to and been up till 2 a.m., 3 a.m. playing Bullet. And some of them don't do it anymore, so they could tell you how they managed to stop doing it, right? But one thing to know is that sometimes when you're doing something a lot and you seem to be addicted to that thing, it's because you're trying to fill a hole somewhere else in your life. It might not even be about the thing you're doing, right? So if Lauren had some kind of issue with chess, it might not even have been necessarily strictly with chess. It might be something else in your life, and then you're doing the chess because of the other thing in your life, right? So, okay. So we're going to more or less stop there, folks. I'm going to create the tournaments for tomorrow morning. So just go create. Excellent, Lauren. Great to see you in such a good mood all the time now. And by the way, like not just Blitz or Rapid, I had a period where for about 4 years, I think, I was playing in classical OTB chess tournaments and not enjoying them. And now, of course, I'm much worse than I was then, but I've been able to come back and enjoy playing chess in a different and good and healthy way again. So, Saturday Rapid 1700 plus. Got to switch the duration from 1 day to 3 hours, and the time control 15:05. We'll have them start on Saturday the 21st at 9:30 a.m. as usual. Exactly, Deep Space Bear. To spend 5 hours and not enjoy it, not learn it, and not feel better afterwards, right? You basically wish you could go back in time and use those 5 hours in some other way, right? And why are you doing it? Well, you have to... Yeah, I mean, that's something more up the alley of what Lauren was saying with therapy. Like, it would be really useful if you could figure out the answer to the question of why are you doing it, right? Good night, Summoner. Appreciate you. Good to have you around. Wish you a great rest of the day, and I'll see you next time. Okay, so here's the 1700 plus Rapid.